Hey everybody, Dr. Phil here. This is going to be a video on national differences in economic development. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Alright, so all systems influence level of economic development and a country's attractiveness for doing business, again with respect to political, economic and legal systems. There's a general movement toward democratic forms of government, which is good, and market-based economic reforms. Also adoption of legal systems that better enforce property rights. With regard to level of economic development, the common measure is GDP, gross domestic product. We also can use PPP, purchasing power parity, which is an adjustment that provides a more direct comparison of living standards in different countries. GDP and PPP data give a a static picture of development. Economic growth rates provide a more dynamic picture of development. Now, with regard to differences in standards of living, official figures can be misleading. The unrecorded cash transactions can be significant in some economies, that's definitely true. Like India's black or shadow economy may be as high as 62% of GDP. EU estimates shadow economy accounted for 10 to 12% of GDP in the UK, and France 21% in Italy, and 23% in Greece. So pretty high, almost a quarter in Greece. And GDP and PPP data cannot and don't indicate growth rates. The economist Amartya Sen argues development should be assessed less by material output and more by the capabilities and opportunities that people enjoy. So the UN created what we call the HDI, the Human Development Index, which is based on life expectancy, education attainment, and whether average incomes are sufficient to meet basic needs of life in a country. This reflects Sen's ideas and gauges a country's economic development and likely future growth rate. For a country to sustain long-term economic growth, the business environment needs to be conducive to innovation and indeed entrepreneurial activity. With regard to innovation, think about like new products, new processes, new organizations, new management practices, and indeed new strategies. For entrepreneurs, the first to commercialize innovative new products and certainly processes. Countries with high economic freedom have high economic growth and richer citizens. So we can think about Hong Kong, Switzerland, Singapore, US, Canada, and Germany. Countries that lack economic freedom generally fail to achieve respectable economic growth. Individuals and businesses must have opportunity to profit from innovative ideas. The economist Hernando de Soto argues developing the world will not benefit from capitalism until property rights are better defined and indeed protected. Democratic regimes tend to be more conducive to long-term economic growth than dictatorships, even the benevolent kind. Limiting human freedom also suppresses human development and therefore limits progress. Some of the fastest growing economies of the past 40 years began as undemocratic governments. For example, China, South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, and indeed Hong Kong. But it's worth noting only in a well-functioning mature democracy are property rights truly secure. Democracy is often a consequence of economic growth, and we've certainly seen that in South Korea and Taiwan. It's contributed to the attitude of many Western governments towards human rights violations in China. Many Western countries have been hesitant to criticize the country. If China establishes a free market system, it's hoped that greater individual freedom and democracy will follow. With regard to geography, education, demographics, and economic development, the belief that geography influences economic policy and thus economic development goes all the way back to Adam Smith. The economist Jeffrey Sachs argues that by virtue of favorable economy, certain societies are more likely to engage in trade, which promotes economic growth. Investment in education promotes faster economic development, and demographic forces are also important determinants of economic growth rate. An aging population could potentially cause labor shortages and slower economic growth. So with regard to states in transition, three trends in political economy since the late 80s. The first is a wave of democratic revolutions that have swept the world and many previous totalitarian regimes fell. Number two, a move away from centrally planned and mixed economies towards free markets. And number three, a shift back toward greater authoritarianism in some nations and signs of a retreat from the free market model. So it's almost like some nations are advancing and some are almost moving backwards. With regard to the spread of democracy, many totalitarian regimes failed to deliver economic progress to the majority of the population. New information and communication technologies have broken down the ability of state to control access to uncensored information. Economic advances have led to increasingly prosperous middle and working classes who push for democratic reforms. And we've certainly seen that in places like China. At the end of the Cold War and the New World Order that followed, the collapse of communism and many authoritarian regimes in Latin America has given rise to speculation about the future of global geopolitics. Fukuyama argues the war of ideas may be at an end and the liberal democracy has actually triumphed. I think that's yet to be seen. Huntington saw the world split into different civilizations, each with its own value systems and ideology. The modernization of non-Western societies can result in retreat to the traditional. Now, since the 80s, a transformation from centrally planned command economies to market-based economies has occurred. Command and mixed economies failed to deliver the sustained economic performance achieved by countries that had adopted market-based systems. Many countries shifted to a market-based system. Deregulation is the removing of legal restrictions in direct investment by foreign enterprises and international trade. It helps the establishment of private enterprises. It also helps to remove price control. So think about regulation, government regulation. Think about just sort of pulling that back, stripping it away. Maybe not getting rid of it, getting rid of it entirely, but making it easier for businesses to operate. Privatization transfers ownership of state property to private individuals. This was first seen in Great Britain under Prime Minister Thatcher, and now is a worldwide phenomenon. Now, this does not guarantee economic growth, that's worth noting. Legal systems, we have laws that protect private property rights and provide mechanisms for contract enforcement. Without a legal system in place, there's little incentive to engage in economic activity. And with regard to global changes in political and economic systems, markets that were formerly off limits to Western businesses are now open. China, with a population of 1.3 billion, could be a bigger market than the US, EU, and Japan combined. India, population 1.4 billion, is also a potentially huge market. Latin America has 600 million potential consumers. So again, 3 huge areas of growth. There's no guarantee that democracy will thrive in newer democratic states. So there is a little bit of reticence about, to what extent companies really want to invest heavily, like foreign direct investment in those areas, because of the, perhaps state autocracy, coup d'etats, and so on and so forth. All right, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you all in a future video.